The key thing is to establish a relationship as fast as possible. And depending on a person's personality and their comfort level with coming to China, et cetera, it will take a little bit more time or less time, but basically reaching out to colleagues. And I think one of the things that I've learned from my kind of 13 years in China so far and working with senior execs is that with the Americans, they don't necessarily realize in the beginning how important, how much relationship-oriented the culture is. So it's not enough really to spend time with the whole team. It's really very important as well to spend one-on-one time with the team members to build trust. In terms of personalities, not really. And of course in China, as in the US or as in any other place, you'll have people of different age levels and personalities and interests and all of that. I think in China what I've noticed is, with regard to these execs that I've coached, that it does come down to a relationship again. That, given cultural reasons, let's say you have an American general manager and American staff, just culturally they'll be able to figure each other out pretty fast and sort through their differences, usually pretty fast. In a Chinese context, especially if the Chinese team members haven't been outside China, not a lot of exposure to Western business practices or Westerners generally, there's a pretty strong, Chinese way of thinking about relationships and really only starting to trust people once they get to know them a little bit. So I would say that for the Western general manager to spend more one-on-one time with people, get to know them as people, get to know their interests of the team members. Why are they working for this company? Why do they want to work for a Western company as opposed to a Chinese company? This type of thing. I think that is a common challenge, actually, and I think it goes. Most of the people I coach actually, who are they're senior executives either from the United States or Western Europe, or they're from China, so they're senior folks. And I've noticed on those occasions where I've coached these senior Westerners and their team members have been a bit more junior. The same types of things showing up in the juniors as tend to show up in the Chinese managers when they're older, right? When they're more senior. And that is a little bit less proactive, a little bit less risk-taking, generally speaking, than you'd see the Americans being. So how does this show up? So you might find a Chinese senior manager less reluctant to push back with a different opinion in a group of other senior people. And the Americans, as you probably very well know, they tend to like to speak up. They tend to like to expect that other people will push back with a different view if the person disagrees, or with a new view that could take the discussion forward. And so really, this is what I see a key difference in the cultures. Oftentimes in a meeting, so if we're around a table and you're the Western exec, for example, you might ask questions of your Chinese team members, and there might be one or two people who, because they're more extroverted in their personalities, are willing to speak up, maybe tentatively, maybe not. But a lot of folks won't, because my observation of Chinese cultures, have been in China a while, is a certain humility, Confucian humility, a certain amount of feeling that I don't want to stand out too much, because what if my colleagues think that I'm showing off? Who's this guy to speak up, etc. So I think that's where the one-with-one time between the general manager and the colleague really pays off. You can encourage them, you can coach them, mentor them to say, okay, well, I know you have ideas on this, they're great ideas, please share them with the group. So if it's okay with you, I'll just call on you during the meeting and I'll ask you to speak about that. Feel free to speak up. So that type of encouragement given privately is very valuable. Yeah, in one sense, so when I worked in Hong Kong for a bit, I worked in the United States, so what I sensed was that, and I think it's been borne out by data for the last decade at least in various parts of the world, including Asia and China, that people tend to leave jobs 60–70% of the time because they don't get along so well with their boss. So they leave the company not because they don't like the company per se, but that they just aren't clicking as well as they would like with their boss. So I think as a Western general manager, or for that matter a Chinese general manager maybe working in the US or let's say Europe, I think the key thing is really, again, it comes back to building the relationship. Knowing your people, as the general manager, knowing your people well enough to know what their interests are, what their values are, what they would like, how they would like to see their career develop, and then as much as possible helping them do that.